Well, I've seen a lot of strange movies, but this one is something else.
Really?
Yeah, I know I say that all the time, but this time I really mean it. I was told this was a weird one in the comments section, but I was not expecting this. From 1973, this is The Baby. I'm Jay Harangue and I've wasted hours of my life watching terrible films.
You should subscribe.
So apparently I need to clarify this. When I say I've wasted hours of my life watching terrible films, that does not mean that all the films I watch are terrible, nor does it suggest that every film I've covered on this channel is bad. This movie isn't bad, it's just a bit weird.
It is.
Right, now that that's cleared up, let's get on with the film. This is Anne Gentry and she's the main character.
Hi.
She's a social worker and she's been assigned a new case. And here she is at her initial consultation at the Wadsworth house.
Is this the Wadsworth house?
Yes. Here we meet Mrs. Wadsworth and her two daughters, Jermaine and Alba. Mr. Wadsworth is no longer in the picture.
As far as I'm concerned, he might as well be dead.
That's nice.
I made a special effort to get this assignment.
And why is that?
That's because she's particularly interested in Baby.
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 What is his real name?
He doesn't have one. It's just Baby. The Wadsworths live off welfare payments they get from the government due to Baby's condition.
I'd like to see Baby before I leave.
So that's happening. This is Baby.
What?
That's right, he's a fully grown man in his 20s, but in his head, he's a baby. So he sleeps in a crib and has to be spoon-fed in a high chair. Anne is intrigued by all this, so she starts visiting the Wadsworths all the time. Mrs. Wadsworth's like, don't you have any other clients? And Anne's like, yeah, but I'm really interested in Baby, so I'll be hanging around here all the time. Anne's boss, Mr. Foley, has concerns about this too. He tells her she needs to start seeing her other clients, but she's like, no. He tells her that other social workers have spent ages with the Wadsworths and no good came of it. She's like, well, there was that one woman who was making progress. I wonder what happened to her.
She disappeared.
Oh, right. She's like, what happened to that woman anyway?
Well, the police looked into it. They were satisfied.
And that's the last we hear about that woman. Anyway, the next day, Anne's back at the Wadsworths pushing Baby on a swing. She tells Jermaine she thinks Baby seems pretty intelligent, but Jermaine's like, no, he isn't. Anne wants to play ball with Baby and is really impressed by how he can retrieve it like a dog, but Jermaine doesn't look impressed, and neither apparently is Alba.
Any kid a couple of years old can do that, but he can't do any more.
It's time for Baby's nap now, so Alba drags him inside like a bag of trash. While that's going on, Jermaine walks Anne to her car and asks her about her husband.
Tell me, what does he do? Roger was an architect. He, did you say was?
Yes.
Anne's like, I don't want to discuss Roger. Let's talk about Baby. But Jermaine's bored of baby chat, so she invites Anne to go hiking with her in the mountains. But Anne's like, no thanks.
Oh, when was the last time Baby was examined by a psychologist?
He had all those tests when he was a baby.
And Anne's like, okay, bye. When she gets home, Anne is watching slides of her husband Roger with Roger's mum, who she lives with. We're led to believe that there was a car accident for which Anne was at fault and now Roger's dead. But more on that later. Meanwhile, Mrs. Wadsworth, Jermaine and Alba have gone out and left Baby with a babysitter, who's chatting to her boyfriend on the phone.
Of course I'm wearing panties, don't I always?
What?
Listen, I have to go see about the baby.
Whatever.
But she agrees to come over to her boyfriend's once she's finished. And he's like, don't forget about your pants.
Yeah, all right, just for you. I'll make sure they're off.
Good work.
Upstairs, Baby is crying, so she changes his diaper. But he still won't sleep, so she lets him out of his crib. They start playing with this toy, but that all ends in tears. So now he's crying again.
No, baby, no. Baby, no.
Ew, gross. That's disgusting.
While that's actually happening, the Wadsworths have come home. Jermaine's like, where's the babysitter?
Probably upstairs with Baby.
Oh dear.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
Nothing really happened, honest.
Right.
With your damn tit in its mouth, and you call that nothing?
Yeah, I guess you have a point.
So they start kicking her head in. Mrs. Wadsworth goes first while Baby cries in a corner. Then the girls take over while Mrs. Wadsworth grabs a belt.
Oh my gosh.
Jermaine's like, okay, that's enough now. So they send the babysitter home.
If you tell anybody about this, we'll press charges.
Yeah, I can't see her going to the police after what she's been up to. The next day, Anne's back and she asks Alba where her mum is. She tells her she's out, so Anne's going to wait and ask more questions about Baby.
Baby was born backwards. He's been that way all his life.
Then Baby starts crying. Alba tells him to stop or she'll punish him.
Uh-oh. How do you punish him?
When he's bad, he gets a spanking.
Yeah, I bet he hates that. Anne's like, he's just hungry, go get him a bottle. But she's like, no, I can't leave him alone with non-family members. But then the phone rings, so Alba has to go inside, leaving Baby alone with Anne. Anne immediately tries to get Baby to stand, but then Mrs. Wadsworth gets home and puts a stop to it. Anne's like, I was just trying to help.
Are you sure that's all you want, Mrs. Gentry?
What more could there be?
Then Anne tries to get Mrs. Wadsworth to agree to put Baby into a special clinic for the retarded.
Excuse me?
Her words, not mine, plus he's clearly retarded.
Correctamundo.
Mrs. Wadsworth's like, only if you can throw the ball and get Baby to bring it back. But he keeps looking at his mum and he won't do it. So Anne leaves.
Get inside.
Ooh. Inside, Alba pokes him with a cattle prod.
What?
Yeah, this is what they do to make sure Baby doesn't walk, talk, or stand.
Well, that makes sense.
Later that night, when Baby's asleep in his crib, Jermaine comes in to see him.
What?
Yeah, I did say this movie was weird. If anyone's too horrified to continue, I'll give you a few seconds now to press the like button. Do it, please, thanks. Now back to the film. Anne goes to see this doctor and tells him that she thinks Baby's a normal man and that the Wadsworths are using negative reinforcement to keep him in his current state. He's like, why would anyone do that? And Anne explains that all three of Mrs. Wadsworth's children are from different men.
Whore.
All of whom fucked off as soon as their kid was born.
So she's taking revenge on the only male member of the family.
Yes, of course. Now things are beginning to make sense.
But then Anne gets a phone call from her boss telling her that the Wadsworths have made a serious complaint about her.
What kind of complaint?
We never find out what the complaint was, but considering what's already happened, I think I can have a good guess.
Yep.
So Anne goes straight over there and confronts Mrs. Wadsworth. Mrs. Wadsworth asks Anne why she's come back.
To tell you that you're sick.
Okay, you said it.
Anne's like, I'm reporting you to the Public Guardian office. They'll take Baby away from you.
That's just so much horse shit. This baby belongs to us.
When Anne gets home, she asks her mother-in-law when her new swimming pool is going to be finished, and the water is scheduled to go in later this week. But more on that later. Also, Mrs. Wadsworth's called. She really doesn't want the Public Guardian office getting involved, so she apologises and asks her to give the family another chance.
We all need a second chance, don't we?
Even after everything that's happened, Anne agrees to this, so is going to Baby's birthday party tomorrow at their house. Now, this party is weird. Baby is force-fed some cake and then left to crawl around the house, while this guy Dennis tries to shag Anne. Jermaine's walking around with hair like this, people are dancing like this, and Anne is playing darts like this.
That doesn't look good.
It's absolutely ridiculous. While that's going on, Mrs. Wadsworth signals to Jermaine to spike Anne's drink. So Anne passes out and is dragged down to the basement by Jermaine and Alba. They tie her up and Mrs. Wadsworth starts beating her. But Dennis won't stop knocking at the door. Mrs. Wadsworth's like, Alba, go and put your finger up Dennis's ass so he leaves us alone.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, so that's happening.
It's one finger.
Okay, then.
Mrs. Wadsworth and Jermaine go back up to the party where people are dancing like this, leaving Anne tied up in the basement alone. But Baby has somehow made his way down there and helps Anne get free. As you can imagine, this takes absolutely ages, so this scene goes on and on and on. Mrs. Wadsworth is trying to get rid of all the guests, but Alba's little trick seems to have worked a bit too well on Dennis, so it takes them a while to get rid of him. By the time they get back to the basement, Anne has escaped with Baby. They tried to go after her, but Anne's punctured Mrs. Wadsworth's tyre because she's really clever, yeah. The next day at Anne's house, the swimming pool is almost finished. Anne's mother-in-law asks if she wants them to finish it now, but she's like, no, let's wait a few days. Why? We find out later. Anne has dressed Baby up in a suit and sends photo of him to the Wadsworths with a note saying, look, he's behaving like an adult now, so you may as well not bother trying to get him back. But they're not giving up. Somehow they find Anne's house, and Mrs. Wadsworth sends Jermaine and Alba in there to grab Baby. But they're taking too long, so she goes in herself. But when she gets in the house, she finds both of them dead. Anne jumps out with an axe, but Mrs. Wadsworth manages to grab it. There's a chase scene, but in the end, Anne's mother-in-law stabs Mrs. Wadsworth at the top of the stairs, and over she goes.
Good.
She's still alive, so Anne and her mother-in-law bury her alive under where the swimming pool's about to go, alongside her two dead daughters. So yeah, it turns out Anne wanted Baby for herself all along, but not for the reason you think. Remember Anne's husband, Roger, who we were led to believe was killed in that car accident?
Yes.
Well, he's still alive, but he has such bad brain damage as a result that he now has the mind of a child. And now Roger has a playmate and a pool to play in. And that's the end of the film. So until next time. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. And please consider joining my Patreon. There's a link in the description. Thank you.